Well, hello, this is Peter Combs from Bidamount.com and P.O. Combs Asian Art. And today we're going to take a look at ways in which you might be able to differentiate between Republican copies and modern examples. And the reason I'm doing this is that there are an awful lot of fakes being produced today in the style of 18th century and in particular Yongzheng and Qianlong pieces and Ming pieces, claiming that they're not from back then. These are Republican pieces, and I'm here to say that 90% of the ones you're seeing out there are not. They're brand new fakes, and they're being peddled around by auction houses and on eBay and other places, and they are brand spanking new copies. Okay, this is not a brand new copy. All right, if some of you are scratching your head saying, "Boy, that looks good," it should. It's a real one, and it's an 18th century sgraffito ground, pink ground vase. And the thing that's important to look at is the quality of the work of these originals. First thing, understand the quality of these very fine originals, okay? And they did make copies of these, they do make copies of these currently. But when you look at this up close and personal, you see the shading in the pink, and they did these during the late Yongzheng and early Qianlong period. And notice the sgraffito ground, the scrolling, how it really scrolls and it flows all together so beautifully. The soft shading of the yellows and so forth. That is all missing on the new pieces, and that they're claiming a Republican, and they didn't do them, all right? And if they're really good, they try to peddle them as period, okay? These kinds of pieces that we're going to scroll through quickly here do not turn up on the market, okay? This is a very common type of copy. These moon flasks with variants of this lotus pattern and other patterns are turning up all over the place. Run for your life. These dragon form vases, again, spectacular quality. This one sold, I think, at Christie's. Brought a lot of money, a huge amount of money. All right. They didn't make these in the Republican period, and I'm going to go through. These are all pieces that typically were not made in the Republican period in any quantities whatsoever. All right. So if you see them coming up as Republican, run for your life. All right. This is a Ming style piece that was done in the 18th century. It was unmarked, but beautiful quality, beautiful shading, lovely, lovely underglaze blue, wonderful potting, very powerfully potted. And again, they didn't do them in the Republican period. This pair of vases, of course, many of you recognize. And interestingly, shortly after this pair sold in London a couple of years ago for millions of dollars, almost $20 million, as I recall, copies of these came onto the market within 2 months. Okay, and they were turning up at auction houses around the United States. And one of the things that was very interesting about these vases, one of the quickest ways to tell if it's a fake, is that they are not mirrored pair. This is not a mirrored pair. They are a pair, but the pattern is slightly different, but they're very complementary to one another. As they said in the write-up on these back then, the pairs of vases from the 18th century were never exact copies mirroring one another. They were done with slight changes, and they were meant to sort of please the other, okay, to complement the other, okay. Yongzheng, Dalsai enamel dishes like this were not commonly done in the Republican period. All right, if they did some Dalsai work, usually they had the small Qianlong 4-character mark and overglaze enamels, and they were not this fine, okay. But the Republican, the copies claiming to be Republican are flowing everywhere. This type of vase was done in the Republican period, but the quality of the work was extremely good. The reproductions today are not that good. The colors are not harmonious. They're not pretty. This is a Qianlong example with the pink handles, all right? Again, strong colors, clear colors, complementary colors, beautifully done. And if you pull this up and you look at these carefully, you'll notice the children all have slightly different facial expressions. This is during a dragon festival. One of the boys has the dragon, the other one has the ball of yarn. Kids are playing, kids are pounding on a little steel drum. Another boy looks like he's on a pony. And it's a very well assembled landscape with beautifully done rocky outcroppings behind them, okay? And again, good clear colors. Now, one of the things I want to point out is if you come along and you have something that looks like it's a Kangxi thing, this is a site that you can get to on the web for free. It's the Tang collection. They did an auction of about 100 pieces out of this collection a couple of years ago. And if you want to brush up and get a really good look at Kangxi pieces, if you see a piece that someone is trying to sell, as they didn't do a lot of Republican copies of Kangxi, they did a few, all right? But this is a site where you can go, just as a reminder, and pull up really great looking examples of Kangxi pieces like this, like these bowls. All of these are enlargeable to great size like this, okay? This is the bowl that, for example, is over here. And you can enlarge it and take a good look at it and really get a sense of the enamels and how they shade through, okay? All right, now, this type of bowl, several of these, a number of these have turned up claiming to be Republican, okay? This is a fine Kangxi dish, rimless. They didn't do them, all right? So if you see one that's claiming to be Republican, because they really can't replicate these Kangxi colors very well, you know it's a fake, okay? Yen vases, they still do these baluster vases, these big vases, but the quality of the work is not as good. And most of the fakes that you see like this that they claim are Republican, 90% of them are brand new. They did not make a lot of these in this style during the Republican. Ditto for this crackleware piece, okay, with Yongzheng mark on it, which was a revival of Sung pieces during the period. All right, this lime green ground vase with this spectacularly well done lion mask and ring handles. Again, harmonious colors, gentle shading, and this nice pink ground down here, okay? This is a popular color palette, and you will see this color palette later on here on this soft pink against dark pink against soft pink. You'll see it on some Republican pieces. That they did bring forward, okay? But on the repros, they don't do that, okay? Moon flasks. They did not make a lot of, they didn't hardly made any moon flasks during the Republican period, but they are turning this and this particular pattern out by the boatload. All right. Here is another one. They made none of these in the Republican period that I'm aware of. These are, mid 18th century, extremely fine examples. Another fine example of Kangxi, and you could just go on and on through them. These are all real pieces from the 18th century. Okay. All right. Again, these blackbirds. Blackbirds were a popular pattern in the sort of latter part of the Yongzheng period. You started to see them, and then there was a revival during the Empress Dowager period, in the late 19th century, in the Guangxu era, and they started using blackbirds again. But once you got well into the Republican period, you didn't see many of them, and the giveaway is how well they're done. Okay, these birds are very naturalistically painted, and they were fairly naturalistically painted in the Guangxu, but the modern ones, the birds are always sort of stiff and unnatural. This bird looks like he's really perched on that tree. And then look at the quality of the way the tree is done. Very naturalistic. And no fear of negative space, and good shading in the colors. Okay? The shading goes to hell in a handbasket on the reproductions. All right? Here you have these beautifully done blackbirds. Again, very animated, cackling and looking around over his shoulder, one upside down, sort of. Some nice script. Here's a picture of the bottom of that bowl, and on and on and on, okay? But I'm just saying that when you see pieces that look like these, and they go, oh, these are Republican, they are not Republican, okay? They are just terrible copies, all right? Including these iron red pieces. And, of course, then you have things like this, was known as the Bainbridge type of vase that was sold in London a few years ago. They sold a mate to it just recently. Again, this dragon vase, beautifully done, bottle vase, deep colors. This is a period Yongzheng bowl, beautiful shading, beautifully rendered tree branches very naturalistically with the fungi coming up here. Look at the quality of the shading in this. It's very three-dimensional looking. It looks like it's coming off the bowl, okay? And ditto for the floral little pinwheel thing. These flowers on Republican pieces were quite well done. On the reproductions, they are not well done, okay? So if you always check the decoration, the shading of the colors is crucial, and the color variations for here, example of the leaves, in different depending on the light hits them, would go from yellow to a light aqua green, and then the beautiful pink shading over here on the left. That's a wonderfully, I think it's better painted than this side, but for some reason they focused on the other, and so on and so forth. All right, so check those out. All right, now these are real. No, let's go to the fakes. Okay, this is a fake. Okay, and again, you remember before we were talking about that soft, the pink against the pink ground. Well, here's sort of a blackish red against a darker pink, almost raspberry ground. Notice the clunkiness with which the colors are done, how hard the colors look. The yellow is has too much orange in it. All right. The bats don't look really delicately rendered, okay, for an auspicious symbol. Here's the foot rim, okay? The foot rim is looks burnt, it has this toasty sort of area around the inside of the foot. It shouldn't have that. And you have sort of these oddball, the foot was not evenly finished and so forth. All right, and then you have here are the vases. This is a pair of pocket vases that were done. This is a type that was done in the Jiaqing and the Guangzhou, Jiaqing and Daoguan period. Excuse me, and they did do these. But on this pair, the yellow is too bright. It's not harmonious. Okay, it's just not harmonious, and they did not make these in the Republican period. Okay. All right, they did not do these in the Republican period, these Qianlong blue vases with Buddhist symbols on them. All right, they just didn't. And they certainly didn't do this. This is a Ming-style vase with very hard colors, that reddish brown and these silly green handles coming off the side. The form was done in the Ming Dynasty, roughly. And here's a picture of the bottom with a 4-character Qianlong mark. They were trying to make this look like a Qianlong revival piece, or a revival piece during the Qianlong period, but it was Ming, and they sometimes sell this form as Republican or as even try to get them off as period. Ditto for this. The biggest problem with this vase that should jump right out at you is this purpley color here. All right, a very unusual color. You don't want to see it. Look for colors that are out of place always. This is a brand new vase. It is not Republican. It's brand new, okay? The shape was used somewhat in the Republic period, but the enamels and the colors are all way off. Now you get on to things like this. This is an abomination. It has this really unattractive grayish blue against sort of this grayish brown, and so on and so forth. It's just, and the proportions are not particularly pleasing, and it's just a really bad example. And then on to this. This is something that they started producing recently, because a lot of dealers and people who are not honest know that during the Empress Dowager's period, the Dowager Cixi, she devised her own patterns for porcelain. She had some favorites. She had actual input onto how they looked, and this is a type of this is a pattern that's always related to her, with the circular seal and the 3 characters against this ground with the black. Again, here are those black birds again. The problem are many with this vase. One is the red is too hard, too pasty looking, too gooey, and so forth. The vase is too glossy. And this green is not the right color. They blew the green. They blew the color off, all right? Now, it had this, you know, the wisteria and so forth on it, which was a very popular flower in China, but not attractive. And the other thing I want to point out, when you look at the bottoms of these vases, if you see this sort of wear around these vases, you see that black, that brownish gray line, put the piece down and walk away. That is a technique they've developed by sliding the vases back and forth over different types of surfaces, including smooth pieces of slate, wood, whatever they've got, and it gives it the appearance of authentic wear. So when somebody looks at this, they'll say, well, you know, it isn't that old, but it does have wear on the bottom. No. All right, you're convincing yourself. No, this is faked wear, faked glue. This says Old Peking on the bottom. You know, what the heck does that mean? Anyway, this is a reproduction. All right, this is a reproduction. These are reproductions, and if you pull them up, and unfortunately the quality of these photos were not great. If you look at these vases carefully, you'll see that the shading and the coloration is not particularly good. And again, you see this sort of odd purpley color creeping into the piece. All right, you don't want to see that. Here's the bottom of one with sort of this apocryphal mark on it, and these birds. All right, and the problem is that these birds look awfully stiff, awfully uncomfortable, and they look like they were done on a computer. All right, and the other issue is the flowers. When you look at these flowers with apple blossoms or any of these small blossoms, check them for detail always. Okay, this is a shape that was used in the Republic period. All right, but the coloration of the birds, the way they're drawn, they look so stiff and so unnatural, way too symmetrical, and the flowers look like they were pasted on. All right, if the flowers don't look like they were, if you can't imagine the artist gently pasting the flowers on, be very, very leery. All right, and then we get on to this. Now, this is a really bad repro, okay, of a deer flask. And I showed it only because on the bottoms of these pieces, on reproductions that they try to peddle as old, either as period or as Republic period, they put this brownish goo in the enamel, okay? You see it here, up in here, and if we go over to the piece, and also the seal is just way too stylized. Here's the piece. The colors look like puke. There's no other way to say it. And the decoration, the way the deer are drawn, they look like hybrids between weasels and deer. The faces are poorly done, and again, you have this staining that they rub into the enamels to make it look like it's old. And over here, you can see they actually scrape some of the enamels off. They'll do this to a brand new piece to make it look old and convincing. The porcelain is sort of this dingy grayish white color. The ram's heads are not naturalistic looking. They look like blocks. And when you get up here, this is something that should hit you right in the face. Notice the pine trees, the way they're done. Okay, typically when they do these pine trees, when they outline the pine needles, they do it very carefully, so that they stand out very three-dimensionally against the background. And when they color the branches should flow in and out, even on the late 19th and early Republican pieces. All right, they looked quite naturalistic. But notice here, the green spills over out of the pine needles and all over the ground. This was done in a little factory somewhere. And they used the same color green here that they used up here. All right? They painted the ground green, and then they just carried that enamel up. So you can almost picture the person doing the color, washing it in. Somebody else did these sort of oddball little terrain bumps. And then they just continued the green right up through here. All right, and they added a slightly darker green here. You can see it, but it's so amateurish and so sloppy. You just immediately put the thing down and run away. Okay, just run away. All right, and now you're on to this. This is a copy of one of these, again, these Scafato ground Qianlong enamel bowls. They did do some with this mark in the Republican period, but this is a fake. And again, the first thing you see on here is that fake rubbing on the foot rim. Okay, all right. But the other thing to notice too is the shading is bad. The shading is terrible. And whenever you have any of these elements, you don't need to go looking for a list of reasons to not buy it or to try to convince yourself of something else. Never try to convince yourself. You after a while you'll just know it is or it isn't. And the other thing that you're going to notice on these is you notice this area underneath on the bottom. There are areas that are sort of bluish gray and they get a little tan and all this. This is not for the light from the photography. This is actually not. This is uneven color. You don't want to see that. But also the shading of the greens, very clunky. And the Scafato ground on this, if you look here, for example, remember on that original piece and on the Republican pieces when they did it, it scrolls. It's a scrolling effect. It looks very natural and it sort of weaves its way around the bowl. Look at this here. These are just little lines that have been dabbed on there, and they crash into one another. This is a mass production bowl, and you notice here that the scrolls don't scroll. You see little lines in it, but unless you look carefully, you realize that these are not flowing together very well. So you can put this bowl down and walk away. And I realize that from a distance it doesn't look too bad, but the colors are off. This ground color isn't what you want to see. It's a brand new fake, and even in the Republican period, when they made these very delicate bowls on occasion, they were really well done. All right, and here is another one of these who-form vases with the deer. This one is worse than the last one, if that's possible. If the first thing you want to notice is that the deer all look like they're floating on little islands of grass. All right, instead of on this landscape. And you notice the landscape, again, they've sort of smudged in the groundwork here. All right, there's a deer here that's just almost invisible, very badly painted. They wouldn't do that, okay? It would all be clear. But now take a look at the pine trees. The pine needles are almost indistinguishable from anything. They're all blurry. They're not stylized. They should be stylized and fairly crisp, all right? And the rocks are very stiff, obviously, and unnatural looking. They look like they were cranked out by a kid with a computer. All right, and the handles are they're red handles. They have an opening in them and all that, but they're not styled. There's no shaping to them. They're just red handles have been slapped on there, and this is a very bad vase, okay? And then you get onto this Yongzheng, sort of done in the Ming style blue and white vase. Didn't do these in the Republican period. And onto this. This is something that I've seen on eBay. I've seen all of these somewhere at one time or another. But this one I noticed in particular in the last year or so. This turned up on eBay from a seller over in the UK who's an auctioneer who also sells stuff on eBay. And this is a brand new dish, okay? Even though it has a sort of unusual looking back, all right? All right, they didn't do these in the Republican period, and they didn't do them in the Qianlong or the Yongzheng or the Kangxi period. This very sort of odd, concave, oatmeal-y, unglazed bottom. All right, the blue is this is all way too stylized, and this is bearing a some sort of Ming mark. I can't read it, but it's not. Okay, and now on to this, the Femi Jun Ball or dish. All right, this was peddled as a I think it was, they tried to sell it as a Republican period piece reminiscent of it was either a Qianlong or a Jiaqing bowl. And the first thing you want to look at is, again, the hardness of the enamels. Republican period, they still had very pleasing enamels and very good color. Today, they use whatever colors around, and some of these pieces look like it came from Earl Scheib. The other problem is the back of it, this color, this sort of robin's egg textured green. It's too dark. It's the wrong color. And the foot is not done in the right style, and it's not white, and is very poorly colored. And again, you can see where they've sort of rubbed it in to make it look old. And wait till you see the front of this thing. There you go. All right, this looks almost like a piece of French armorial work or something, you know, like the coat of arms, the way it flows. You have this very peculiar center pattern, like stacked pyramids, and then in squares around here, and so forth. All right, and it's very busy. It's way too busy. It's way too jammed up to be anything. All right, this is a brand new fake. All right, and this is a fake. And the first thing that I noticed looking at this was the handles are too small. The yellow is too lemony looking. All right, and while there's some decent spacing among the birds, it looks like they were hurled onto the thing. All right, and if you take a look at this carefully, you'll see that the colors don't match up, it's just the decoration, again, is not of good quality, all right? And this is just an awful vase for all the reasons you can imagine. It's white, it's glossy, it looks like it's been, it looks like it's been waxed, all right? Here's a picture of the bottom, Qianlong mark, not a chance in the world. Here's a detail of a Republican piece. Again, poor quality. This almost looks like a cartoon of some kind. And here they did do color variations between the undersides and the oversides of light and dark green. But this limey green they didn't typically use, and it doesn't flow well. All right. It's just a not good quality decoration. Here's a picture of the bottom of another one of these moon flasks. The colors leap at you. This is brand new. Again, didn't do a lot of moon flasks in the Republican period, all right? So if you see one and they say, oh, it's a Republican moon flask, put it down, walk away. They did do a few in the late Qing, but you won't mistake them for this because the colors were better. The colors, always the shading, always the brushwork. This was peddled off as a Qianlong piece, a reproduction rather, a Republic copy of a Qianlong piece, okay? And again, you blow it up and you take a look at it. And we've seen these, and there were real ones done during the Guangxu period that used this cloud pattern. We've talked about it in other videos. The problem with this cloud pattern is they look too stiff, they look too unnatural, and the eyes of the dragon are ridiculous. Okay, it looks electric, and this is where they got the color. Obviously, is this bad green they threw on the back. This is not a color you want to see on a Qianlong vase or on a Republican vase. All right, it's the wrong color. And then you get down to this, a rare pair of double peach moon flasks. All right, these types have turned up in auctions everywhere, and sometimes they're peddled as Qianlong, and sometimes they try to sell them as Republican or revival copies of Qianlong. They're revival, and they were done probably around 2005. They're new. Okay, always beware of rare pairs. Beware the rare pair. A very wise dealer once told me, because sometimes people get so excited to find a pair they don't examine them carefully enough to decide if they're actually authentic. because the idea of owning a pair, especially to the Western collectors, is very popular. Prior to the Qing dynasty, they hardly ever made things. They didn't make things in pairs very often at all. The idea of having a pair seemed sort of odd, except for certain ceremonial reasons. All right. And then on to the bottom of this. This is the bottom of one of these vases. Flat, grayish white. It looks like it was made in a factory because it was. And the mark is okay. Just because a mark is okay doesn't mean a thing, because marks are very easy to copy. Surprisingly, though, they still, even though they're making copies, they send, and they're trying to deceive people. They make the mistake of doing the mark wrong. They leave out elements, and then you get onto this. This was a copy of actually, there was a real one of these that sold about a year ago. I think it was enameled. It was an enameled example that did very well in London or New York or somewhere. This is a brand new knockoff, and if you forget the rest of this piece and just focus on the center and look at the way these birds are done, the quality is so ridiculously bad. The quality of the decoration is so ridiculously bad. This one looks like it's about to drop an egg or something, and this one is very stiff and unnatural looking. I mean, there's two birds, but that's about the extent of it. And this decoration around the outside is very unnatural looking. Again, the handles look mechanically derived, and they didn't make these in the Republican period in general, all right? And then on to this pair of bladder form underglaze red or iron red underglaze vases with Qianlong marks. No, okay, just no and no and no. These types have turned up on the market here in New England, down in the South, in California, at a few auction houses. An auction house in Seattle had some that looked very similar to this at one point. These are total iron red fakes. And one of the things I wanted to point out was, if you blow this up, you take a look at it, there's some orange peel and so forth on the ground. The first thing is they screwed up the dragon's face here. They sort of chopped off his nose and messed this up, which wouldn't happen with a Republican piece, and certainly wouldn't happen with the period one. Two, the decoration is more like that of the Kangxi period, not the Qianlong period, and the way the scales are done are so poorly rendered. All right. It looks like they did it with the tip of a marker or something, just sort of dabbed it all on, dab, and went around it. All right. And it's a pair. So, you can just run away from this comfortably, not worry about it. And I suspect often when you pick these pieces up, the modern copies tend to be way too heavy. Much of the time, vases like this, when you pick them up, they'll feel like there's a ball of cement in the bottom of the vase, and that's because they're pretty generous with the porcelain. They don't want it to break in transit, so they make them sort of thick and heavy. All right, and this pair had Qianlong marks. Okay, and again, here's the bottom of a vase you never want to own. You have this very flattened thing, some faked wear, and some tinging and so forth. Then you have this wonderful clear, glossy white, and when you go over to look at the piece, it's just, again, one of these moon flasks that's stiff and mechanical in the Qianlong period, done like it was done in the Qianlong period. And then you have this copy, all right, of a Qianlong vase. And this one was made to look like a Republican one, or to mimic a Republican piece, okay? And one of the things I wanted to point out was, when you look over here at the mark, they did the mark, this second character here, with this, it looks like an upside down Y. Sometimes it looks like an upside down T. That's a mark that was rarely used on Qianlong pieces, but was on occasion. And it was also used on revival pieces in the Republican period. So these guys are making fakes, and they're including that mark to look like that. And it's sort of a way, people that know a little bit but not enough will think, oh, well, it's got that messed up mark. That's what they did in the Republican period. And they won't bother to look at the rest of this piece, okay? And one of the things I wanted to point out was, because we're going to go look at a vase that is Republican that has this pattern, this archaistic banding on here. And I don't know how well you can see that, but the quality of it's very poor in general, all right? And in a minute, we're going to look at a piece that isn't. And here's the bottom of it. That's clearly new. All right, but it mysteriously still got one of these rubbing lines around the foot from, again, trying to make it look like it's got some age, just a little bit of age, maybe Republican. It's not. This is a brand new pot. And again, you have this pink ground vase. You have that gray line again on the foot, all right? And this color is off, okay? And this has obviously a Qianlong mark in red, and it's not. And when you look at this vase on its total, It's too skinny, too tall, too vertical. The color is wrong. The cartouche has been sort of elliptically elongated, and the flower in the middle almost looks like a monster. It's not very well done. Not very well done. And the bat is black. I don't like that at all. All right, and then on to this. This is a famous bowl from the copy of a famous bowl from the 18th century. The colors are striking, it contrasts and all that. But when you look at the work, it's just absolute crap. And they didn't make those in the Republican period either, in any number that anyone can think of. Okay, and it goes on and on and on. And lastly, this is a brand new copy of a Ming Bowl. Okay, and these Ming copies have been around now for quite a while. And for a while, they were trying to sell them as real Ming pieces, and then they sort of became, well, they're Qianlong made in the Ming style. Now they're Republican in the Ming style. They're not. They're brand new. Okay, they're brand new. And there's the back of it. See, this was one that was done to emulate, to fake a Yongzheng thing. All right, it's a Yongzheng mark. And they did do some of these in the Yongzheng period, but this isn't one of them. Look at the gloss. Look at the shine on this thing. The foot is badly finished. You really can't see it here, but there's a grayish tone to it. It should be pretty much snow white. All right, here's the foot. Okay, here it is, badly done, and the enamels are very stiff, and they try to now sell these as Republican. Okay. Now, last, we're going to hop over here and take a look at some real Republican pieces, because this is what they should look like. And again, we're going to talk about decoration and shape. This is a fairly well-known shape that was popular in the Republican period. Not much before it. Very slight variations of it were around before, but this is typical Republican vase. This particular vase actually sold, as I recall, for about $1 million or over $1 million about 2011 at the very peak of the market. All right, and the first thing you want to look at on this is the way the tree is done. Beautifully done, very naturalistic, very gnarly. You can almost sense how it would feel to your fingers. The flowers are gently painted on. You could see that he drew this, and then he outlined and then gently shaded in the flowers. Very painterly, very elegant, very soft. And then down here you see this nice shading here of the pink, and the way the rock was drawn. Okay, the rock was done in layers with black ink and then washed in with different colors, and just very painterly, as they like to say in the art world. Okay, that's what a Republican one looks like. Now, do you remember the band that we talked about on that vase? And I said we'd be getting to one that sort of looks like this. All right, well, here it is. Okay, it's two there. Okay, that band that was around the foot of that other piece that was sort of just looked like it was dropped on there and didn't have a lot of character to it. This is the pattern, basically, that they were using. Picture this as a long, narrow strip. All right, and when you slide down here, you get to the kids. This is a real Republican vase. Notice the quality of the way the children are rendered. The faces are all different. They have shading and so forth in the fingers and around the eyes. The kids are all looking around and looking up. You know, he's got banners with it looks like a scroll on it. This boy has a roof scepter over here. This one is dragging it's not a hobby horse, but it's a boat with wheels on it. He's using the foremast on it with a couple of pomegranates. They're going to some kind of festival. These two are hauling a peach with a cloth over it. All very auspicious. And again, you have that pink on pink ground that was popular in the 18th century, and they did bring it back in the Republican period. And today when they do it, they usually make the darker red too dark, the ground color's wrong, and it's not gently painted with all these nice little swirls. It's a lot of work just here on the foot. But again, there's that band, that archaistic band. It's quite three-dimensional looking. It goes from light to dark. And on the other one that we looked at earlier, on the fake, it didn't do any of that, okay? All right, and overall, that's a really pretty vase. That's a really pretty vase. And as I recall, it sold for a lot of money. I can't remember what it sold for. It did very well. And here's another Republican bottle form vase with an all-around landscape scene on it. And they do make repros of these, but this is something you want to look at carefully. Look at the artwork on this for just a minute, all right? And sort of assemble this landscape in your head. In the foreground, you have these two beautifully done deer, a male and a female. The male has the horns, and they're looking out over this little valley. It's very three-dimensional, shockingly three-dimensional. You have these beautifully done pine trees climbing up over the rocks, and here you have the rocks open, and there's a building in the background with mist going across the top of the building and mist above it. It's all just beautifully done, okay? The Republican copies don't get into this much detail. They're not this thoughtful in their work. This is a very thoughtfully done piece of work. Nice looking pot. All right. And again, this is another Republican bowl done like a Yongzheng bowl, but beautiful shading, very naturalistic, light to dark up here in the flowers. And notice how the flowers just sort of have these gaps and have slight irregularities. And then you have the vines that are supporting the pods from the lily pad. Beautifully serpentine, flowing up, even the ones over here, just sort of flowing along. The grass is quick, coming out off the sides. Nice looking piece. Ditto for the pair of peach bowls. And again, this illustrates the idea of pairs. These are Republican. The peach bowl, peach decorated pieces became very popular in the Qianlong era. And you'll notice here they look like a pair of vases, a pair of peach bowls at a glance, but they're not. They're slightly different, like the famous pair of Qianlong vases. For example, this upper right branch, which mirrors this branch, has a peach on it. This one has flowers on it. This upper on the inside has flowers. This upper has a peach. Okay, and they sort of flow, but they're similar here and here, but not identical. Here, not identical. All right. There's a slight variation in how they're done, and you want to find those variations. Okay, and then on to this Kong, beautifully done. Very nice. Has the blue enamels, which they don't do typically when they do the fakes these days, trying to fool people. In the Republican period, they used a lot of overglazed blue enamel on pieces, especially this pattern at the top with the roux heads. And then you have these nice, very complementary colors here for the woman's clothing and the rocks, and it all works. It's extremely harmonious. Nothing hits you in the eye. All the color values appeal to you as being about the same, and the quality of the work is excellent throughout, including the rocky scenes on the side here and the boat and so forth. All right? And then you get onto the things like this. This is a well-known type of Republican period bowl, overglazed enamels around here, again with the roux heads, and these beautifully done pair of peacocks. Gnarly tree coming up. And this is a late Republican bowl, and they even did some of these in the 50s. They generally always have a 4-character Qianlong overglazed enamel square mark on the bottom, and these are often done in eggshell, but very fine quality decoration. And the knockoffs you have today just miss the mark way too often. Again, for this is a type of flask that was done rarely. I had to really dig around to find a moon flask of any type that was made in the Republican period. And this is one that was, but it certainly doesn't look like one of the blue and white ones. It might have been done for somebody specially. You have this faux bois business at the bottom that looks like trees, which was a technique developed during the Qianlong period. But you have very nice shading and colors up around here, nice looking script, and you have this robin's head stippled ground masks with nice expressions on them. I wish I had pictures of the expressions because I'd seen them once before, and a very, very nice look to them. All right, now this is either a late Qing or early Republican who formed deer vase. And even Christie's and Sotheby's, when they get these in, they don't know whether they're really Republican or really just late Qing. Because the work that went into making them, the people that made them, they didn't suddenly stop and have new people come in and replace them in 1912 when the Qing dynasty ended and became the Republican. All right? But as we talked before about the way the pine needles are done, if you remember the ones before, that's all sort of clunky and undefined. Look at the pine needles here. They're all beautifully rendered, very detailed. And the colors, when they washed in the green, it wasn't sloppy. It's all on the needles. It isn't spilling over into these white areas and up in here and all that goop that we saw before. And the ground color is not the same as the other colors, okay? It's a slightly different tan color. The animals are neatly spaced around. They're moving. They're animated. You can almost see them smiling at one another, okay? Looking at one another. The young deer here are playing, okay, and so forth. And you have two different colored trees. This one is some sort of maybe a pear tree or something. These are pine trees, all right, or an apple tree. And notice the branches, the trees going up through them. The yellow trees is hitting the sunlight, and the way they weave in and out of the pine needles all the way to the top. Even over here, okay, it's not just a clunk of green. It actually has branches. You can see the details of the branches, all very neatly rendered all the way around. And that's what you want to see. All right, this is a nice porcelain piece, okay? All right, here's another one. This is not as good as the last one, but it's still not bad, okay? And here you have it. You have this bluish green. Again, the blue is very carefully rendered over the pine needles. The needles on this tree looked a little bit like pinwheels. Again, you have this secondary tree here. The deer are fairly animated and so forth. I think this one only brought maybe a few $1,000s. The one we looked at before, as I recall, brought about $30,000 because it was very well done. The quality of the work was better on it. And then you do have vases like this occasionally in the late Qing and Republican period, usually done as a special order for somebody. This is a fairly faithful copy of a Qianlong piece. All right? And again, you get back to the fakes that they're making today. These will be heavier. They'll feel very heavy, thicker, and the quality of the work is not as good. The quality of work just isn't as good. All right? If you look at the quality of this work, it is superbly well done. And this underglaze green on blue and soft celadons was a very popular technique especially during the Qianlong period. All right? And the Chow collection, lots of collections over the years have had variants of these and so forth. All right? But this is a nice arrow vase. It was with the little spoolie handles on the side. Good looking thing. All right? But the repros today don't come anywhere near close to this quality. As I recall, it was the foot rim on here that was really the big giveaway why it wasn't period, because overall that piece is quite good, and under magnification, if you check the bubbles and the glaze, it would probably look pretty good to your eye too. All right, but I don't want to get into a big discussion about bubbles because they don't always mean a whole heck of a lot, especially on 18th to 20th century things. All right, now on here, the Hu form vase. This is a Republican piece. This wasn't trying to fool anyone, okay? Because it's such an oddball accumulation of designs, and you have these nice-looking quails, good shading here, sort of a nice sprig of flowers coming up out of it. This vase didn't bring a lot of money, as I recall, but it did pretty well. All right, it looks like it had a repair up here. But then they had this nice heavy enameling business creating these clouds with the herons outlined in black with white enamels on white porcelain coming down. That was a bit of work right there. And this nice sort of natural yellow lappets around the base, and then the scrolling keyboard are running around it, okay? Very typical. And then you had this vase, and this vase is not hard to identify as Republican, okay? And those of you that have been around for a while know that. It's sort of this oblong bullet form vase. They did them in pairs, and these nicely shaded and so forth gentlemen. All right, that shouldn't fool anyone, and they're not making repros of these with the unevenness and all this. One of the things with the repros is they're all too slick looking. All right, and this is a type of vase that they are reproducing, but these are real ones, winter scene vases with poems on them. But one of the big things is that they have this beautiful blue enamel running around all around here with these Buddhist pendants dropping down out of the roux heads. All right, those are real ones. And again, you have this nice mirrored pair, very similar with very slight variations. Not many on this one. The trees are slightly different and that sort of thing. The tilt of the heads are slightly different. And here you have a gentleman being tended to, and flowers. Notice that the vases on the table, by the way, are very similar in shape to the vases depicted in the painting. But this is a real pair. The shading of the faces, very Western, are very nicely done. Okay. Ditto here, the shading in the faces, the Lohan, these are sort of almost an eggshell pair of vases, but quality decoration all the way down, all right? And this is a type of vase that actually somebody sent me a pair of that look just like these about a year ago. They wanted some information on them with the applied bats and the fruit and so forth. And these do turn up in the market periodically. Very desirable, nice colors, okay? And again, this blue enameling up around here, very delicate, lots of detail, and nicely painted flowers, okay? Again, examine the flowers. They're very carefully painted in, all right? Not just dropped on, but properly spaced and nicely shaded, okay? That's something you want to see. And again, notice the wonderful way they shaded this sort of aqua blue at the bottom. Beautiful work, okay? And they're slightly different, but they are a pair. And then you have this vase. This is a type. Fortunately, the knockoff artists aren't making this, okay, because these were never worth a lot. But there were a lot of these done in the Republican period. And one of the things that I've had a lot of these over the years, hundreds, out of estates here in New England. And you have these very good detail in the robes, all right, and very good detail in the face, all right. Yeah, you can really see him. His fingers are all beautifully rendered. And these are nice, and these tend to be very thinly potted. Often they have breaks. But that's life. But this was a nice pair, and this is one of these Millefiori with the landscape cartouches. Again, good quality decoration, nice flowers, nice shading. Again, the shading is so gentle here. Okay, at a glance, you wouldn't notice it from another piece, and you pull it in and look at it carefully, and you can see the beautiful shading up here in those peonies. Okay. And the nice gold rim, all right, and some script. And again, the blue enamel at the top, nice expressions, the rootwood table. But again, very well painted, beautiful painting on this. Okay, this is probably done in the 1930s. Nice soft colors, nice folds on the robes, all right, something the modern pieces typically don't have. Again, here are your blackbirds, okay, and but beautifully detailed, on a beautifully done proportional tree coming up with apple blossoms on it. And the flowers are all just lovely. They're just wonderfully painted, gently painted in. You know, if you sometimes you have to say to yourself, could you picture the artist sitting there sort of dabbing these in? And you really could, because these were just so obviously done with great care. The modern pieces, not so much. And again, the shading over in here from dark to light to like a yellow on the inside, and the same with these greens. All right, it always comes down to the quality of the work. And again, you have the quail vase with a bamboo tree coming up through the middle, and this shaded greens and yellows through here. And the quails are nicely detailed, and this is a perfectly good vase. Okay, it's not one of my favorites, but it's pretty good. All right, and this is a Republican vase. This is done in an 18th century style. All right, and they are copying this particular one. All right, but the thing to do is pull it in. Let's take a look at this thing. All right, the first thing, the shape is very nice with this swollen body. The potting on this vase is excellent. On the originals, the potting was excellent. You'll notice they become slightly disproportional. The sweep of the body is a little narrower, or it's exaggerated on the copies. But when you come over here to the detail shot, all right, look at the shading. Look at the shading on the real one. There's a good example. Dark red light, or dark pink light, and then sort of washed with yellow in the middle. And again, you have this very nice shading here on this orangey red, where it goes from a very, very light orange to a deep dark one. And the way the artist portrayed it, or rendered it, it gives a true sense of three-dimensionality to it. And the same with the way the leaves twist and turn around. And you have a white flower over here, which corresponds to the others. Just beautifully done. So when you have a vase like this, look at the shape. It shouldn't be too heavy. And you should check, visually, is the vase in balance? This is a beautifully balanced vase. The modern ones are not. And the decoration is extremely well done. And here you have, they have tied the flower branches upside down, hanging from this rail, which is a quite unusual touch. All right. And they unable to do those today. And this is a pair of seals that turned up. Actually, they were on eBay for a few days. They got an enormous amount of interest. I contacted the seller because he pulled them, and they ended up on the cover of one of the Christie's sales in London, in the Knightsbridge, I think it was. One of them, anyway. They did very well. I think they're about 220 or 230,000 pounds. But these were done by a famous Republican artist, and beautifully done. And the thing you have to watch out with these is that I saw some of these in an antique shop, and this pattern, my heart skipped a beat from a distance. When I got over there, I realized this was all printed on. These are hand painted, but the copies they're making now, because they're worth so much money, they actually have a way of flat printing these on like transfer, like decals. And you have to look at it under light, and you can be able to find the edges. Be extremely careful with these. All right, and they are turning up on eBay. All right, All right, and then you have this lovely light blue ground vase. And again, you blow it up, and the facial characteristics are nicely done. The shading is nicely done. The scale to the scene is all very well done. And it's a very harmonious vase. All right. And here's another one, eggshell, that very soft glaze, but beautiful landscape scene. Again, with these light greens, but not too bright. And this tree beautifully colored in, the branches. Again, like the pine needles, they're colored in, but they don't spill over. They don't make a mess, okay? On the copies, they always spill over and make a mess. All right, and on to this one. Again, beautifully rendered, very animated with the two mandarin ducks, very auspicious. They mate for life. And here they are. It's a symbol of fealty. And then you have this, a Western scene, Dutch scene, of a woman out with a child and their dogs on an oddly shaped vase. And I threw this in just so you could get a really good idea how detailed and how fine some of these the portrait painters were on porcelain when they wanted to be during the Republican period. This is a wonderfully rendered portrait, okay? And it's just on the side of a vase, but I really liked it. It has this Greek key border, but the shading and the flowing of the robes, the tilt of the head, the way the hair is done, the long earrings dripping down the red lips, and she's, it's just wonderful. And there's a couple of birds, swallows coming in the background, just very nice. And then they did do pieces like this, reminiscent of Qianlong examples. You're not going to see many reproductions of this, but it's beautiful work, and it has this nice gold over red ground, often almost similar to Katani ware. Okay, but again, beautiful decoration, nice scenes, nice landscapes. Not what you're gonna, not something that's going to fool anyone. All right, and we go on and on. Okay, this is one that you've all seen. You may not have seen this vase, but you've certainly seen the bowl with this decoration. Periodically, bowls turn up with this decoration with flowers on the outside, this yellow against gold against yellow ground, and you see them, they have sort of straight-sided bowls. All right, and this is a vase done in that manner, but beautifully rendered. And again, isolate what's around it that's drawing your attention, and just look at the scene. You have this beautiful table with precious objects and incense, archaic incense burners on it, and again, a Republican-looking vase here. And you have an imperial figure sitting in, or a court figure of some type, sitting in this nice big root chair, being attended to, but beautiful, sort of a happy scene. Everybody looks pleased with things. And again, you have precious objects and ribbons floating around. But you look at this element on its own. Learn to isolate elements when you look at things. Look how nice that looks, okay? And that was a nice thing. It had elephant handles on it. This is very much done in the 20th century style and won't be easily mistaken. That's sort of an interesting vase. This is that palette of painting that became on in the early, close to 1940. And they did, we had a big pair of planters done like that a while ago. Again, you have one of these pieces, this vase, very nice composition. Pull it in, isolate everything out, and just look at the composition. Composition on this is lovely. Nice detail, good color, good shading. Again, notice how the pine trees serpentine up through, and there's no messiness in coloring in the trees. Here's a weeping willow, very animated, windy day, and again, the green is isolated to the branches themselves. Okay, that's a nice looking vase. As I recall, that did pretty well. All right. And again, you have, a softer palette, more of a Yongzheng palette on this, but very nice quality. Again, very good quality. This is a type of vase we've all seen. This pattern vase with this background. These turn up everywhere. There used to be a shop on Charles Street that had probably 10 of these at a time at any given time with different grounds. Okay, but I thought I'd throw that in. And you have this very nice with geese. All right. And then you have this. This is a Republican period example, done very reminiscent of late Yongzheng and early Qianlong pieces, under the way they did them under was it Tang, the kiln director, but nicely done. Very pleasing colors of a woman. She's sewing, sitting at her table with candles and so forth. But nice detail, with a lime green ground. And these sort of heavy enamels, triple framed, running around the outside of it. Beautifully done. And we'll move on now. A mallet vase, again, that lots of that blue. This is something you won't see that's being reproduced, peddled as Republican, because these were fairly complicated vases to do, and this kind of work up here with all this enamel took a long time to do. It was very difficult. All right, and the trick is to keep coming back, and I'm going to take all of the pictures on here and upload them to our site, and I'll do a blog about it. And we'll maybe have all the fakes on the left side and all the real ones on the right side, all the Republican ones, and then show maybe a bunch of Qianlong examples. There's an awful lot of photos, so give us a little time. And we'll get them up there, and you can sort of go back and forth and enlarge them and compare them and look at the details. All right? But the big thing to remember is this is the end. And I'm sorry it went on for so long, but in the Republican period, they typically did not do, as you just saw. You didn't see a lot of, and these are all pieces that sold, all the Republican pieces I showed you came from either Christie's, Bonhams, or Sotheby's. And you didn't see a lot that were really repros of Qianlong Imperial work or Yongzheng Imperial work, or even lesser Kangxi pieces. All right, they're not making, they didn't do Kangxi reproductions of the Republican period, and fortunately the fakers aren't trying to do them today because they can't, they're not good enough. At any rate, they are pretty good at copying Qianlong, Yongzheng, Jiaqing, and Daoguan. So you want to be very careful. But if it looks like it's trying to be, it probably is a fake, because they just didn't make them. And I know I've said that over and over, and I want you to understand that. And look at typical Republican period shapes, and look at the quality of work done on good Republican pieces. It was quite exceptional, okay, and had its own flavor. All right, thanks so much. I'm sorry it took so long to get this out. We'll get the rest of it posted, and I'll say when it's done on the weekly video for those of you that watch them all, and we'll try to get that done this week. All righty, thanks so much. And see you next time. Bye-bye.